After nearly 4 years of the channel existing, Mr. Super Oz has reached 199 movies reviewed. So before the 200th movie review drops, I thought it'd be fun over the next 3 weeks to release a countdown of every movie that has been reviewed on the channel and the place that it falls from 99 to 1. This week, we begin with 199 to 133, what I have dubbed best of the worst. So this countdown begins with hate and ends in the category of fine. After that open rolls, the countdown will begin. As of now, only 2 movies on the channel have been graded with the lowest possible score from Mr. Super Oz, that being Hate. It is below a 0 score, and so those 2 films are number 199, The Invention of Lying, starring Ricky Gervais and Louis C.K., which was not funny. I mean, it also stars Jennifer Garner, but again, her presence added to theirs doesn't change anything. It's not amusing. And the 198th movie on the countdown, also living in the hate department, is The Spirit. The cast was strong, but the story, the execution, the presentation was not. Beginning in trash, the 0-star department, number 197, America, the Motion Picture. This story, while the art was all right, the story was so very frustrating. Nothing was realistic. I mean, it doesn't have to be realistic. It just has to not be insulting, but it was. Number 196, Ghostbusters 2016, the reboot, the all-ladies Ghostbusters. I couldn't have imagined a movie in the Ghostbusters franchise that I disliked. That is until I watched this film. Number 195, Batman Returns. This is not the Penguin. This is not Catwoman, and this Batman does not matter. And with that, Batman Returns is the lowest rated Batman movie I have watched for the channel. The low rated superhero films, well, here in the 1-star category of fails, continues when number 194, The Flash. Ezra Miller is not Barry Allen. If not for one heart-wrenching, lovely scene between him and his mother, I could easily have seen this getting a 0 trash rating, but I have a soft spot for motherly love, and The Flash barely makes it into the 1-star fail category. Number 193, Jackpot, starring John Cena. It was a reasonably good premise, but just such a poor execution. It took this thing about 45 minutes before I started thinking it was done. Things were getting all right, and that's just not what I would call good. As a matter of fact, I call this a fail. Number 192, continuing to talk badly about superhero films, the movie that launched the DC Extended Universe, the poor foundation that everything got stacked upon, that being Man of Steel. You cannot introduce the world to the longest reigning hero ever in a fight that basically paints him no better than the villain he is facing. I will never get over that introduction to the world. Number 191, the first Marine film of the franchise from WWE Studios, starring John Cena as John Triton. And John has improved over the years. He's made better choices over the years, but the Marine was not his best outing, and it was like the villains were better than the hero for sure. The love interest was the best I can say. Like she tried, but again, it was a fail of a film. Number 190, Mortal Kombat Annihilation. It fell short of its predecessor, and it also let down the video game franchise, which was hot. And this just was not. It was a fail of a film. 189, that would be a movie that should not have been made. Independence Day Resurgence, a film that was so bad that when we did the first ever All or Nothing on the channel, Independence Day Resurgence, which was a fail of a film, caused Independence Day, the original, to also fall into the nothingness. Number 188, Just Married, a movie that I thought I was going to give a lower rating to, whether it be trash or hate, because the one time prior I had it on, I saw no redeeming qualities, but when I got to the finish line, I was like, okay, fine. It's still a fail of a film, but that's the best I can do. You talk about fails, I have to go into what makes The Batman, number 187, a fail, and that easily is tainting the legacy of Thomas Wayne and subsequently changing who Edward Nygma is. Because Edward Nygma, the Riddler, ought to have been fun, amusing, and a guy who thinks he's the smartest man in the room, not an absolute serial killer who does terrible things. And yeah, it was wrong. While the Penguin was closer here than he was in Batman Returns, that doesn't discount the fact that he was better, but still not correct. There were problems with so many characterizations of who was being shown in the film that it bothered me. That's why I'm so happy that The Batman is outside of the DC Universe continuity and in its own realm. That actually, in some ways, improves it because I don't have to worry about it clashing with other DC movies' continuity. Number 186 on the countdown, a movie that some people consider an all-time classic. However, I had no reverence for Gremlins, and so when I watched it for the first time, I just felt like it was a fail. I say this because it had strong setup, but poor execution. I think that the idea of Gremlins was fun, but I didn't love the movie. I felt like it couldn't figure out what it was. Is it horror? Is it comedy? I don't know. I couldn't. Is it a holiday film? Like, so many things about Gremlins felt like it wanted to be everything and nothing all at the same time, which bothered me. The 185th best of the worst, Still in the failed department, Star Wars, The Phantom Menace. Whether it be the introduction of midi-chlorians or Anakin making a pass at and attempting to get with Queen Amidala, whether he knew it was her or not, doesn't matter. The poor use of Darth Maul. There were just so many things about Star Wars, The Phantom Menace, that just felt like a fail. It was bloated. I think that had Jar Jar not existed or been cut down to be much smaller, I could easily see the movie getting a better score. Speaking of better scores, we are now entering the 2 out of 5 passable range, and the bottom of the 2s is number 184, that being Marvel Studios' Eternals. It was much like Star Wars: The Phantom Menace, bloated, too many characters, not enough clarity to what was happening. If the Eternals had been released in the streaming format, where every one of the 10 heroes got their own spotlight, and then we culminated in 2 final episodes of a show that would have played out to let everybody know, all right, here's who they are, and here's what they're facing, set up, climax, and maybe even a third. So maybe it's 10 episodes to set up who's here, and then 3 episodes for them to have a big climactic finish. I think that it would have made for a better presentation of these Jack Kirby created characters. Number 183, Dumb and Dumber 2. If you've ever heard of the concept of copy and paste, this was it. So much of Dumb and Dumber 2 just felt like a retread of the first, and to a lesser way. Number 182, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Most of my problems with the 2 ranged films are that they're too long, things are not clear. It's a common plague of the passable films. The things that, while I can see some redeeming qualities, mostly I think that they're worth passing up on, because I like the general idea of the Illuminati. I like the general idea of the multiverse, but I did not like much of the execution of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Number 181, this one actually falls into the not very funny for it being a comedy problem, and that is Queen Pins. When I see something has this style, this loaded of a cast, whether it be Paul Walter Hauser or Vince Vaughn, Kristen Bell, when I see this level of talent, I want / expect it to be a very high quality comedy, but it just missed on so many levels, and so I consider it to be quite passable. Number 180, that being Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines. It does not hold up to the standards that were set from Terminator 1 and Terminator 2 Judgment Day. The constant recasting of John Connor is, while to some degree understandable, also rather frustrating. This isn't as bad as it gets, but Arnold looking old when he's supposed to be a machine is also like, what's going on here? Was not a fan, and I think that Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines should be passed on, passed up, not really watched. The Marine 3 Homefront is number 179. I must say that in the third film, Mike Mizanin had not quite gotten there. And also, in his defense, the people around him, his sisters in the story, his best friend, who I called the Hangman, they didn't really help him make this feel like it was a big-time film, whereas the villains of the original film actually did help John Cena a lot. Number 178, speaking of John Cena's franchises continuing, that would be 12 Rounds Reloaded. Randy Orton vehicle, this reimagining of a John Cena franchise, was passable. It was by no stretch of the imagination top quality filmmaking, but at least it was coherent. Hard to come by when WWE Studios was making films. Number 177, a movie that was put on top of, as I said, a terrible foundation, that being Batman versus Superman, Dawn of Justice. I know. Watch the director's cut. There's so much more. Yes, the director's cut does thread the needle better. It does keep the narrative going as an improvement, but whether it be the director's cut or the theatrical cut, Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice is only passable. You do not kill Superman in his second appearance and expect people to care. No matter how much you want to rewrite history and say, oh, Batman came out of retirement because of the multiple 9/11s that Superman caused or was a part of, that doesn't make it better. It was just a passable 2 out of 5 stars film. Number 176, Star Wars Attack of the Clones, was an improvement over The Phantom Menace. The pacing did get better, and they certainly cut down on the level of Jar Jar Binks. So with that, it becomes better by minusing some of the problems. The 175th Best of the Worst film that the channel has reviewed, Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 1. In this film, so many narratives are being set up, so many stories are being shown, that it gets very perplexing. But in the end, it was passable. It was a 2 out of 5 stars. Number 174, Batman and Robin. A film that, as a young person, felt fun. A film as a young person was much more appreciated. But the older I get, the more I'm just like, you don't need a Bat credit card. You certainly don't need Bat nipples. You don't need to change Barbara to Alfred's niece and not Jim Gordon's daughter. So many things about Batman and Robin were a miss. While there were a few hits, Poison Ivy among them, the overall movie, I think, is very worth passing up on. The 173rd Best of the Worst, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. This animated feature, while not my favorite art style, what it did was it had so many different characters and different directions that it was pretty passable. I was like, man, you kind of, while you didn't ace the test, you passed the test. 172nd Best of the Worst films, Gremlins 2. This thing, I saw the and Peele skit on it, has always made me very amused. And it just, unlike the first, seemingly realized, hey, we are not all that serious. Let's be crazy. Let's be over the top. Let's go all in on Gremlins 2 and be ridiculous. Number 171, The Dark Knight Rises. It was a completely passable, but the least best of that trilogy. Number 170, The Butterfly Effect. A movie that when it came out 20 years ago, I thought was far better than I did when I rewatched it in recent times. I just think that it's passable now. It's not mind-blowing or amazing, but I'll say this, for its time, it was willing to do things that most movies don't feel like they are by just taking chances. Thank you for being here at Mr. Super Oz. This video is going out, and this channel only exists because I, Oz, founded Gamble Comics, which first release was Everlasting Survivors, a 68-page graphic novel called All Day Long. Available now. Follow the link in the description that will take you to gamblecomics.com. While there, you can get hats, shirts, posters, much, much more, but most importantly, the story itself. The last 2-star film in the countdown of 199 to 1, that being the 169th film, God's Not Dead, A Light in the Dark. This movie, while was passable, just was weak by comparison to the other films in the franchise that had stronger narratives, that had more clear direction. Now that we are talking about the 3 out of 5s, the fine films, let's start with 168, A Nightmare Before Christmas. Some people see this film as the best, the most festive thing. They can start decorating with its stuff in October and not take it down until January. But this was not something I grew up idolizing or thinking was the tops. So with that, when I watched it, I was just like, it's fine, but I don't really get the hype. Number 167, that being WWE Studios' The Call, starring Halle Berry, cameoing David Otunga. It's fine. It's Abigail, Breslin, that blonde girl that was in everything for a hot minute. She gets captured. Halle Berry works at the 911 call center. It's any episode of CSI, NCIS, FBI, CIA, the Alphabet Soup TV show, but in a hour and change movie from WWE Studios. And so with that, it's not exactly world changing, but it shouldn't have to be. The 166th film in this countdown is Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. It just was not a good follow-up, in my opinion, to the first film. And it certainly was not good when it comes to continuing the legacy of Black Panther, and the introduction of Namor just felt off. Not a fan of the way this film went about doing things. Number 165, Green Lantern: Beware My Power. There was a time when DC animated movies could not miss. This did not come out in that era. It was fine, but it was not the same quality of Green Lantern or DC Hero that the movies had established, or the studio had established they could make as far as quality films. Number 164, The Greatest Hits. This was my introduction to David Corn Sweat, the man that would go on to play Clark Kent and Superman in James Gunn's universe. And it was such a smart film premise, the idea that music can take you back to a time gone by. But unfortunately, the execution did not match the idea, and it just fell flat because almost every beat of the story I could either see coming or was already shown in the trailer. It just didn't feel like they knew how to finish. And so with that, it was fine, but not anything better than 3 out of 5 stars. I love a nice surprise, and that's what number 163 was. Jon Moxley, Dean Ambrose, starring in 12 Round 3 Lockdown. was a pleasant surprise. I had no expectation for his acting ability or a follow up to 12 Rounds 2 Reloaded. And let's be real, 12 Rounds wasn't some masterpiece. It was aight, but you know what I mean? The idea that this movie was fine was all it needed to be. Speaking of fine films, number 162, Fast and Furious 10, or Fast 10. It was fine. It did a bunch of things that it didn't need to do, but one thing that it did very well was put John Cena on the babyface side of the equation, which is where he does his best work. Number 161, Transformers Rise of the Beasts. It was fine. Much like Fast and Furious, it was a continuation of a very long and arduous franchise. And it wasn't the best of the bunch, and it wasn't the worst of the bunch. It just fell in the middle. Marine 4 Moving Target was Mike Mizanin finding his way. It was the beginning of his end of the franchise getting on track to do big work. I've said it before and I'm sure I'll say it again. Star Wars was never my go-to science fiction property, and so the 159th best of the worst films, Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, while it was fine, wasn't absolutely necessary. I think you could say that about a large portion of the Star Wars franchise. I think Topher Grace is the person who edited the trilogies into singular films to make them tighter, and I've always thought that was a good idea. Film 158, the end of a franchise that nobody saw coming, that being Glass. And again, it was fine. It wasn't world changing. It certainly wasn't the best of the bunch, but it was fine. And I love being able to go back and see Bruce Willis in a better place, in a better way than he is currently. Number 157, The Marine 2, a vast improvement over the first, and a film that accentuated what the actor that was starring in it was capable of while hiding what they weren't good at, which is always the right answer. Number 156, Mortal Kombat, that being the original live-action film. It is far better than Annihilation, but far and away from some much better non-live-action films. Number 155, Ace Ventura, When Nature Calls. Jim Carrey just is so untouchable when it comes to over-the-top visuals and presentation. Jim Carrey has something intangible, and I'm a big fan. 154, Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer. The film was fine. It wasn't as good as the film that came before it, but it far and away exceeds expectations from the 2015 version. And yeah, I like the team. I certainly don't love Galactus. This version was weak. The Silver Surfer, Norrin Radd, big fan. Met Doug Jones, pleasant fella. Love that he loved being recognized. It's fine. Number 153, Wanted, which is a movie based on a graphic novel or comic series by Mark Millar. And Mark Millar is one of those people in the comic industry that he has it. He at one time had that golden touch where whatever he wrote got picked up, made into a film, and so much so that Netflix bought basically every idea he's ever had. Love that concept. Number 152, Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 2. It was an improvement over the first and clarified some of the struggles of the first film, so that's always a good thing. 151, Vacation Friends 2. John Cena and crew return and add Steve Buscemi. But the thing is, his addition wasn't really, it didn't gel, I feel like, with the chemistry of the first film. And while the second film is fine, it's certainly not on the same level as the first. I have similar feelings for number 150, that being Deadpool and Wolverine. This film wasn't as good as the second, and it wasn't as good as the first. Deadpool 3, to me, almost felt like not quite a cash grab per se, but it's just a, hey, you remember this? Look at that. What if we did it this way? And in some cases, better. It fell short of the top spot, even in its own franchise. Number 149, Dumb and Dumber. Jeff Daniels, Jim Carrey, classic comedy. It's, what can you say? It's dumb, but it's dumb funny. So many things about that original film just stand the test of time. Number 148, The Amazing Spider-Man 2, was a film that saw itself bigger than it was. It had such lofty expectations. Unfortunately, it fell short. The things that it did well, it did really well, much like the death of Gwen Stacy. It was well executed, and Peter being affected by it, well done. Number 147, Scooby-Doo and the WrestleMania Mystery. It's a film that wasn't made for me, but because the channel exists, I reviewed it with Josiah around WrestleMania season, and it was fine. Like, a lot of the voice acting was better than I expected, and the story itself was predictable, but it's made for kids, so what can you expect? Number 146, Beetlejuice. Again, much like A Nightmare Before Christmas, this is a film that often people put in such high esteem, but because I didn't grow up having affection for it, I just thought it was fine. I really like Michael Keaton, and his performance here made me think he would have made a really good Joker in an alternate reality where he wasn't cast as Batman. Number 145, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, the follow-up to the groundbreaking Spider-Man animated feature, and this one, I thought it fell short of the mark that the first film had set, but it wasn't in any way bad. It just was kind of middle of the road stuff. And obviously that's where we're at in the countdown, because when we get to 144, the Boondock Saints to All Saints Day, I have almost identical feelings where it fell short from the one that came before. It had lofty goals but didn't hit the mark. So many things are that way on this countdown when it comes to continuations or sequels, because 143, Shazam! Fury of the Gods, does not measure up to the original Shazam film. It shies away from that family element. It doesn't have that same cohesion as the first. And while it's fine, it's not what I wanted or needed from the Shazam franchise. Number 142, Scoob. It surprised me. It introduced characters I wouldn't have expected, and it took the known characters in different places and did the story in a different way. And so it turned out fine. Again, it's not as though fine is a bad score. It's just not as high as we are going to get next week and the week after, when the countdown gets into much better films. Number 141, The Scorpion King. I have major affection for the Mummy franchise, and this spin-off of that, which actually landed itself more sequels than the Mummy itself, I thought was a very strong beginning. With that, it kind of helped launch Dwayne Johnson into a whole new world, because when he was in The Mummy Returns, it was a very small role, and here he got a leading role, and good on him. 140 in the countdown, Hulk versus Wolverine. It might have been a short film, but it was a well thought out short film, and it takes a rivalry from the comic world and brings it into an animated, enjoyable, fine film. Number 139, Talladega Nights, The Ballad of Ricky Bobby. This movie was fun, and oftentimes me and Will Ferrell don't have the same sense of comedy, but here, most of what he did I thought was enjoyable. Number 138, Justice League. And I know that much like Batman vs. Superman, everybody says the Snyder Cut is so much better than the theatrical cut. And while, yes, the 4-hour version of the film is better, it does fill in the gaps. It does put storylines in the right place and characters that were taken out in. To me, it doesn't matter whether it's Joss Whedon's Justice League or Zack Snyder's Justice League. The films, both, are here in the fine department because of how they are still stacked upon the foundation of Man of Steel. And you just cannot build perfection on imperfection. 137, God's Not Dead, We the People, was totally fine. It tells a story of new characters along with reoccurring characters from the franchise, and it's not the best of the bunch, but it's certainly not the worst. Yeah, I think overall the franchise has more positives than negatives, but this is among the weaker films. Number 136, the absolute weakest Superman movie in Christopher Reeve's quadrilogy, that being The Quest for Peace, Superman 4. The budget is just so obviously cut within this film, but the thing that makes Superman 4 superior to any Henry Cavill Superman is Christopher Reeve himself. And while I understand that visually and effects-wise, perhaps people can make an argument for any of Zack Snyder's trilogy being better than Superman 4, I don't think it's even within the realm of argument that somebody could say that Christopher Reeve isn't definitively better. Because that's my personal opinion on Reeve/Cavill. Movie 135, Rocky 5, is the weakest in the Rocky films, or even the Rocky cinematic universe. But upon rewatching, it's not nearly as bad as I had remembered, because things contextually make sense. And so with that, Rocky 5 is number 135. 134, the second best of the worst, is Batman Forever. And the reason it gets that spot is because Batman Forever, while I know that they could have done better with Dick Grayson, and certainly would have, could have, should have done better with Harvey Dent, Batman Forever knocks the Riddler out of the park. Jim Carrey is just such a delight throughout, and Val Kilmer and Nicole Kidman's Dr. Chase Meridian and Bruce Wayne, top quality stuff. Big fan of the execution. And the number one of the best of the worst countdown, number 133, is Terminator. It's one of those things that just, yes, you can see the robot isn't a robot. You can see that Arnold is working on rubber when he's fixing himself. But the narrative is so strong that the effects can be lacking. It's much in the way of how that I am dismissive or allow Superman 4 to rise so high, is because Arnold Schwarzenegger as the Terminator and Christopher Reeve as Superman just feel like the embodiments of these characters. And so with that, I allow them to get by with things that perhaps I wouldn't it wouldn't make sense for other characters or stories. But this was so much fun. I hope you enjoyed. Come back next week and the week after for the continuation of the countdown to figure out what I, Oz, believe is the tip top of movies that I've watched for the channel. Enjoy.